if you use USDT or general crypto to do any illicit activity, you are a very stupid criminal because you will be traced and you will be caught, right? So it's very, very hard, no matter how much money you have, to get away with it, no matter who you are, because every single action is on chain. And the beauty of blockchain is that you cannot delete it, you cannot tamper with it, you cannot change it. So it will remain there for the rest of the eternity.
Hello, and welcome to Public Key. This is your host, Ian Andrews. When I look out across the crypto ecosystem for the companies that have cracked the real-world adoption problem, those that have actually given people something really useful, I find that Tether stands out as being truly groundbreaking. And so I'm excited in this episode to speak with the CEO of Tether, Paolo Ardoino, about what the future of decentralization looks like for finance, communication, and the exchange of value. Paolo shares his journey into crypto, his perspective on the past and future evolution of blockchain and stablecoins, and he goes deep in response to the common criticism of Tether's business. He also shares some of the company's ambitious plans for the future, including decentralized peer-to-peer communications platform, HolePunch, and a release of their homegrown tokenization system to enable other companies to bring a wave of financial assets on chain. We also talk about Tether's collaboration with law enforcement, leading to significant stolen asset recovery. We cover a ton of ground in the discussion, and you'll find links in the show notes to go deeper on all these topics. Now, on to the episode. Welcome to a very special episode of Public Key. I have with me today Paolo Ardoino, who is the CEO of probably the most important company in crypto, Tether. Paolo, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ian, for having me.
I'm always fascinated by how people find themselves in the world of crypto. Maybe we could start with a little bit of your background. I know you're a technical developer engineer for most of your career. What brought you into the field of cryptocurrency?
I started coding when I was 8, and long story short, that's something that accompanied all my life. I've been working just after university as a researcher for university and for a project that I think was one of the coolest that I could work for, that was building resilient communication systems in distressed and catastrophic scenarios. So that taught me the importance of distributed computing, distributed networks. And to me, that was actually paramount for the rest of my career. As always happens in Italy, researchers are not paid well. So I started learning finance. And I think I learned finance in the hard way. So I had to code trading systems, financial portfolio management systems for different hedge funds. And so I saw everything from stocks to options to macro to different data feeds, all the possible different data feeds, derivatives, you name it. And that was my life until 2013, I would say. And then I bumped into Bitcoin white paper and I look at it and I started seeing the combination of the two things that I really like, that is resilient networks that could resist to the wrath of God and finance. And during my life, I came to the realization, also because I'm a big sci-fi fan, and also having coded a lot, having spent a lot of time in building products, I always felt, and you could see this in the newest shape and form that Tether has become in the last year or so, I started feeling that technology is built for the best case scenario. So technology works only because the world is mostly at peace. But as soon as something will go wrong, as soon as things will, maybe nations will be less nice to each other. I mean, for sure, there are some wars here and there, but what happened in the last century was much more dramatic, someone could say. And I think that everything that we build in terms of technology will not work, will fail the people when they need it the most. And so I think with Tether, but with blockchain, with the new tools that live on distributed networks like distributed ledgers, are much more prone to survive in the worst case scenario. So that's the thing that I like. And that's the thing that drove me to Bitcoin, to then Bitfinex, then to Tether, and become the CTOs of those companies, and then became the CEO of Tether so that I could express this vision with Tether, not only in the financial sector, but also in the technology sector more broadly.
Such an amazing vision, one that I have to admit I hope doesn't come to pass, but I'm glad that people are thinking about building for those scenarios. Because I think historically you're right, like the last 80 years or so of human history has been remarkably stable relative to the hundreds or thousands of years prior to. So it's definitely arguable that we're in an outlier period, and that period has coincided with so much of the technological development that we all drives all of our lives today. I'm curious, unpack the timeline for me, because you started at Bitfinex and there's sort of, I think Tether would be fair to maybe say was spawned out of Bitfinex. In those early days or first conversations about creating Tether, what was the goal that you had in mind in that moment? I sense that maybe Tether's become something much bigger than the original inception. So I'm curious to hear that from somebody that was there.
So in 2013 was the first year Bitcoin reached the $1,000 price mark.
Hmm.
And the landscape of crypto was completely different. Right? There were like few exchanges and probably less than 10, at least less than 10 meaningful. They were all international to each other, all in different jurisdictions. So while in 2014 and 13, people were seeing those price movements. And so the crypto industry, the nascent crypto industry was trying to become more professional. It couldn't really, because in order to have a professional financial market, you would need one function that works very, very well. That is arbitrageur function. So the arbitrageur is the activity of a trader that sells Bitcoin on the exchange where the price is higher and takes the dollars from the sale, move the dollars on the exchange where the price is lower, buy Bitcoin on that exchange, and rinse and repeat. With that action, the price of Bitcoin across all the different trading venues becomes aligned, becomes like very, very small. But instead in 2013, like one exchange had $1,200 at a given time as a price. And then another one has 1,100 and another one had 1,000. So the spread was incredible. And of course, traders wanted to capture those spreads, but they couldn't, because if you move Bitcoin from one exchange to another, it takes 10 minutes. But if you try to move dollars, it could take 2 hours, 1 day, 5 days. There was the weekend. So it was not very efficient. So the genius behind USDT is called Giancarlo De Vasini, is the current CFO of both Bitfinex and Tether, and noticed that inefficiency at Bitfinex and thought, well, we have this great technology called blockchain. We have the US dollar that is the most used currency in the world. Why we don't put the dollar on top of blockchain and then we move dollars at the same speed of Bitcoin? So the geniality of the idea is because it's very simple. It's very, very effective. And believe it or not, for the first 2 years, no one understood the power of the idea. And then in 2016, I think was Poloniex.
Yeah.
End of 2016, Poloniex was the first one that actually understood it. And so when they listed USDT, Bitfinex and Poloniex arbitrage opportunity became the biggest one, the most efficient. So of course that was reflected in the volumes and the commissions that the two exchanges got. So then when the other exchanges realized that, they also started to add USDT. Remember in 2017, there was Binance. Binance was born in 2017, and so all the other exchanges. But now, today, of course, USDT changed space, as you said, became something that not even us could imagine. Started as a cryptocurrency trading settlement feature into the digital dollar used by hundreds of millions of people around the world. And we are very humbled. I could tell you, oh, well, we knew it and it was all predicted. But no, we are very humbled by the fact that the people in emerging markets, in entire communities, started to use USDT as their digital dollar. And today it's growing by the day incredibly fast. So that is the best feeling, is actually moving from almost a niche that is the cryptocurrency market into the real world. That is the biggest achievement that the Tether and USDT have done in the last few years.
Well, and this is why I opened the podcast describing Tether as the most important company in crypto, because I think you've actually cracked this real world adoption problem that we've struggled with for so long. You've opened the door to all these people around the world who want access to dollars or want access to foreign currency that's relatively inflation free and safe to transact and easy to move around the world, which has been a goal, I think, of lots of projects have chased that. And you've managed to unlock that, which is tremendous. I'm curious to maybe hear a bit about your personal experience from CTO into CEO. In my experience, a relatively rare transition. Oftentimes you'll see technical founders step back from the CEO role into being able to focus more on product, more on engineering. So you've gone the other direction. I'd love to hear maybe what prompted that first, and then what has it been like in the year or so since taking on the role?
Well, just for fun, when someone asked me the question, I say that I just got the shortest throw, but because at some point, I mean, it's not an easy job. Keep in mind that Tether has been the most scrutinized company in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe still today. So, but I love it. But more seriously, I think that the reason why I started coding, started coding when I was so young, because first of all, there was not much around me that I could do. My parents, they were working long hours. They had a farm. So I didn't have much opportunities to meet with friends. And my father brought home a computer. But for me, it was a way to dream, right? So there are people that are good in drawing. There are people good in arts and in many different things, or writing. I was bad at all of them. Yeah, it's true. I mean, they're very, very bad in doing everything related to art. And so the way I thought about coding was, and the reason why I started coding was actually to create my own worlds and help and invite people in these worlds, right? So where I had always that huge imagination. And so I wanted to actually bring people into my imagination. For me, being a software developer was a medium to get to the goal that I wanted to achieve. While the companies were growing, I kept coming up with many new projects, products, ideas, and things we could do. And I thought how we could make Tether become the champion of resilience. In a way, we demonstrated resiliency many times from all the attacks, right? So also the company culture is all about resiliency, but also the product USDT is about providing resilient money. And so we thought that the learnings that we had from the product and the company itself could be spread into different industries, from AI, telecommunications, education. And if you see the new website, tether.io, we try to summarize that in that website, all my beliefs, what I want to communicate in terms of like how technology should be, how finance should be. But it's not my right spoke, it's our entire company, right? So everyone is contributing to this idea because we feel, every one of us feels that there is so much to do in terms of showing to the world that there are better ways to achieve technological independence. Technology should be a tool for independence, right? Not for dependence. And that's what we have now, right? So everyone is dependent from Google Cloud, Amazon, and Microsoft Azure. And ideally, internet was born to give freedom to people, freedom of information, access to information independently from where they were. And that went south many years ago, especially after the 2000 bubble. And so how we can try to regain that sense of independence, right? I think like as a single person, you shouldn't be independent. As a community, you should be independent. As a city, you should be independent. As a country, you should be independent. And how with distributed ledger technology, but also with peer-to-peer technology, and we can achieve that, but we should try to regain back the original ethos and philosophies that were part also the cypherpunk movement that I feel we have been losing. So, but it's a long story for the long run, but I feel like the company is really driven towards that. Everyone in the company feels that way, and that's so good as a refreshing. That's why, I mean, Giancarlo started something that is, I think, incomparable, in my opinion. I'm biased, of course.
Can I challenge a little bit on the idea of the dependency and the lack of independence a little bit? Like, I totally appreciate your point. If an Amazon region goes down, if US East 1 has a hiccup, you see it kind of cascade across the internet in terms of various software applications also going down. So there is a concentration risk there. But if I think back to sort of mid 2000s state of technology where everyone had to host their own servers and hardware was very expensive, data center space was hard to get and maintain, that was a much smaller level of access, right? We didn't have mobile phones in everyone's hand and pocket on the planet. So the platforms were smaller. It feels like the public clouds, while we've got concentration risk there, have actually lowered the price and therefore the barrier of entry to so many more people, companies who are trying to innovate and do things on this connected network of the internet. What's the alternative to those providers that you would hope to see, I guess maybe is a better way to frame the question?
Yeah, I mean, in the last 13 years, or actually it's 17, 18 years, we had the smartphone. We had a huge technological development.
Yep.
Today's smartphone is much more powerful than a mainframe of 2005. So much less power consuming. We have bandwidth. Bandwidth is not very centralized, right? So the beauty of bandwidth is that so internet connectivity is managed by an enormous amount of different providers and consortiums. But then 70% of internet traffic and information is stored in servers owned by 30 companies.
Yeah.
That's the concern that I have. Now, internet was born to be point-to-point and peer-to-peer. Anytime you connect to internet, one of your devices, it will get an IP address. So the IP address is like your home address. If someone wants to send you a letter at home, they put the address, and that letter, they post the letter in their country. If you are in the US, someone writes it from France, and that letter will find the shortest path to get to your house. The idea of the internet was exactly that, right?
Yeah.
So everyone would be connected to internet eventually. And actually, we are achieving that. So everyone is connected to internet. And our devices at home and pockets are infinitely more powerful than what we had in 2000, 2005, and 2010.
Yep.
So our devices are very capable of storing an enormous amount of information and actually dialogue peer-to-peer between each other without having a central server. Let me get this example, right? I'm Italian. Let's say that I live in Rome. Most of the people live in an area nearby their parents, right, and their family. 90% of the people live nearby within like 100 kilometers from them. But let's say that I live in Rome and I want to send a message to my mom on WhatsApp or on Signal, on Google Meet, whatever. That message will go to Frankfurt and then go back to Rome.
Mm-hmm.
If I do a video call with them, every single data packet will travel thousands of miles to go back to them. That's not very intelligent. Humanity tries to go to Mars. We try to go to Mars, and yet we pretend that every single data packet, every single text message has to travel thousands of miles. So think about how much government have been investing in internet infrastructure in a useless way, because information could go from my phone to the nearest ISP router and back to my mom.
Yeah.
So that is the waste that we had to suffer from, is due to the will, the interest of control, because we have the technology. I mean, Tether funded, I personally co-founded this project called Hole Punch. And at Tether, we are funding as a company, Hole Punch team, to keep developing this project. And basically, we thought that one huge innovation that we had was BitTorrent as the true real peer-to-peer file sharing system. But what if we took that technology, we paired it with the cryptography that we learned from blockchain, and we would use it not only to share files, but also for real-time communication? So this recording that we are having, we could do it on feed. And some people think, oh, well, but if I connect my phone directly to yours, the quality will be bad. And we need servers in the middle to help the quality. And that's not correct. Actually, if we connect directly, the server in the middle, like imagine if everyone would start doing calls on Zoom, 4K calls, 4K quality calls. Zoom has to compress the calls, has to reduce the quality for everyone in order to survive. But even if I connect directly to you, it's my choice and your choice. We already pay for our own bandwidth. And our phones are fully capable to do 4K and high bandwidth streaming. And they can store hundreds of megabytes of data and terabytes of data. We should use cloud computing for the things that really matter. Now, of course, AI model training you need a lot of GPUs for the moment, so you can do that. But I think the reason why we are in this situation is like a dog eating its own tail. But these big tech companies have to force all your traffic to go through their servers in order to milk the data. Otherwise, they cannot pay for the bills of their own data centers and keep building more.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I don't like. We are, really, again, we are trying to go to Mars, and then yet we pretended that our messages have to go around the world before just to travel 10 miles.
Fair point. I take the criticism. Where are you with Hole Punch, by the way? Should we be doing this recording on Hole Punch right now?
Everyone that tries Teeth, right? Teeth is available on the App Store and Play Store.
Yeah.
Everyone that tries Teeth tells me two things. The video quality is insane, right? It feels like we are one in front of the other. And the other thing is that the latency is insane, right? So it feels like really you are in the same room. Because also, if I'm in Rome and I talk to my mom, the call data package will travel 5,000 miles. So I've been like, maybe a half a second later, you can feel it, right? It doesn't feel like real time. But instead, if I can do it directly, then it will make a difference, right? Because it will 10 milliseconds or 5 milliseconds latency. So again, it's much better feeling. So I guess everyone to trying to download Kit is not perfect. It's still in alpha, but we are demonstrating to the world. There is a Bitcoin room. We are connecting 1.7 thousand people in that room, completely peer-to-peer without servers that share photos, videos, and all different media. That is the power of what we are building. Not everyone is realizing that, but it will be a game changer.
I haven't tried it, so we'll link to it in the show notes. Everybody that's listening can go out and download it. We'll add a few thousand more people to your Bitcoin room, and we'll try it out for ourselves. I want to shift topics a little bit. You mentioned earlier that Tether's been the most scrutinized company in the industry, maybe in the world. I think one of the big controversies for a long time was, well, are Tethers actually redeemable for dollars? And not just one or two of them, but all of them. Let's say we had a massive run where everybody wanted to swap out of the digital asset into the traditional one. My sense as an outsider is you've done quite a lot of work in the last few years to make sure that you're rock solid on this point. So I just want to give you maybe a few minutes to describe when someone issues a new Tether and they send $1 to the company, like where does that go? What happens in the back end and maybe in the reverse process as well?
Historically, the controversy around Tether was first they said we don't have the money. Then they said, oh yeah, you have the money, but it's invested in Evergrande. And then third, oh fine, you have the money, you have a lot of T-bills, but now I'm sure we will get to that. The bad guys are using your product. So since there was this shift in narrative by the same people, no, it's not like different people said different things, but the same people, right? Almost the same people, same publications, same media. You start thinking that they are just moving the discussion because you are proving them wrong all the time. And then eventually, as we are proving them wrong also in the last point about the bad guy, I don't know what they will come up with. Like, you are Italian, hence you are bad, probably is the final thing. And, not that they didn't try already, right? So they call us, oh, well, these Italian. Like, sure. I mean, Italy, if you don't know, created the first bank, right?
Yeah.
Created Monte Paschi Siena. So you know one or two things about bank. But anyway, so we have the primary market. So there is a huge distinction in Tether for the primary market and the secondary market. The primary market is our platform called Tether.to. It has a strong KYC and ML onboarding program, very, very deep. We work with professionals, only for professional customers. We have a limit of $100,000 for issuances and redemption because we think it's very, very important to have direct connection only with professionals so that we can do the deepest due diligence on every single one of the primary market customers. So once a customer is approved through the KYC ML process, they can start issuing and redeeming. So the issuance process is easy. The customer sends a wire, let's say $1 million. We receive the wire. The customer has to specify which blockchain they desire to use for receiving the USDT. We send the USDT back to the on the desired blockchain. Now, we take the dollars that we get on the wire, and basically what we do is we invest in T-bills. The short parenthesis is that Tether, as of today, has almost basically very close, like almost breaking the 100 billion US Treasury mark. And it's crazy, right? So we are now comparing ourselves to countries. If we were a country, we would be 18th country. We have more T-bills than UAE, than Spain, than Australia. We are just behind Germany because Germany sees us in their air mirror, right? And they have 103 billion US treasuries. Now, you could say, well, but how we know that we have those treasuries? First of all, we have a quarterly attestation. The attestation is the industry standard. So every stablecoin insured publishes an attestation. And ours is published by BDO, that is one of the top auditing firms in the world. But on top of that, there are two things that are very important, two events that are very important. First one, 2022, a group of short sellers led by Fear Tree and others, like I think also even Genesis was caught in some email saying that they were shorting USDT. But basically it was this huge consortium of hedge funds and traders that even publicly on Bloomberg, all the newspapers, just after Terra Luna started saying, well, we're going to short Tether after USDT below par, below $1, because we think that they don't have the money.
Yeah.
Their assumption was that first we were lying about our reserves, and second, even if we had a little bit of money, everything was invested in Evergrande. That again was very stupid. We never invested in Evergrande, and even the Chinese investment was very tiny, like commercial papers. But the rest was actually invested in all the commercial papers were rated A or AA or AAA, right? So we were very confident in our position. And by the way, by that time in 2022, we started shifting a lot in T-bills as well. And all the commercial papers and T-bills were short term, like 90 days. But anyway, these guys thought, oh, you guys don't have the money. Or if you have the money, you have 10% that is liquid, 90% is like in long-term maturity municipality bonds in China and plus Evergrande. Like the craziest of the theory. And no matter how much we said it was wrong, that didn't matter. Anyway, they started to sell USDT below $1.99. So what happened was that when you do that, you try to cause a bank run, right? Because if you sell it at 99 cents, you have a market maker that buys on the secondary market on exchanges, right? We talk about the primary market, that is Tether.to. The secondary market for USDT are exchanges and blockchains and other service providers. So these traders started to sell USDT on the secondary market below $1. So market makers were buying this cheap USDT, coming on the primary market, redeeming for $1, then moving these dollars back to the exchanges, used to buy more USDT, and reason. In 2 days, we redeemed $7 billion. And in 1 week, we redeemed $10 billion. In less than 1 month, we redeemed $20 billion. The $7 billion was almost 10% of our reserves. Then $20 billion were 25% of our reserves. And then they stopped because they understood that their calculation was actually wrong. So there is no bank that survived to more than 10% of redemptions or withdrawals. And think about in 2023, Silicon Valley Bank, Silvergate, and Signature went belly up, and in 2008 was Washington Mutual went belly
Yeah.
up. And New York Community Bank this year went belly up because they could not sustain more than 10% of withdrawals because the banking regulations allow banks to lend out up to 90% of their balance sheet or 90% of their balance sheet. So 10% is their blow up mark. Now, we passed that with flying colors, as I said, in between 2023 and 2024, 4 banks blew up. One of them, Silicon Valley Bank, had 3.3 billion in uninsured cash from our main competitor. That was probably around 20% or so of their reserves, between around 15 maybe. And so without FDIC stepping in and saving the bank, also our main competitor would have been that. The funny thing is that all these guys were accusing us of doing the things that they in fact did with low risk management and keeping uninsured cash in the bank. Second, the banks were kind of accusing indirectly us in doing, and all these funds and everyone was accusing us in doing long-term investment while they were investing in 30 years municipality bonds when the interest rates went up, and so they couldn't cope with the change of the curve. So I think it's very poetic of what happened, at least from my point of view, is like you accuse us of something that you know that you are doing inside your house. So it was very, very fun. Then the other thing that happened this year was 2024. There's a guy called Howard Lutnick, he's the chairman of Counterfeit Jail. It was January, he went in Davos, and Bloomberg TV said 4 words talking about Tether. They have the money, and he said it aloud. And then Bitcoin 2024, still this year, Nashville, talked about the difference between us and our main competitor, but also said they have the money, they have more money because we have been publishing attestations, right? So we showed that in the last 2 years, we made basically $12 billion in profit. So they had more money. He said they have more money than the total issued tokens. And he said also, I did 2 years of due diligence on them. I've turned every rock. And on top of that, I see they have the T-bills with me.
Yeah.
So it's like having Larry Fink from BlackRock saying it's the same caliber. And if you read the story of Howard, he's incredible, right? His reputation is impeccable. And so that, I think, really helps people put things in perspective and understand that one thing is the speculation. The other thing is having actual facts, the trial by fire in 2022, having someone like Howard and Cantor really vouching for us. And so I think we are in a very good position when it comes to they have the money.
They have the money. Howard also said that on stage at the Chainalysis Links conference in April. So I just wanted to shout that out as well. We've seen him do it in person. He's done an incredible amount of analysis, I think, of your business, gone through all the details, and is very confident in his statement when he says they have the money. He means it with all his heart. Let's tackle then the other big criticism. You said it already, right? You work with the bad guys. I happen to know, because Chainalysis is supporting you in some of this, you guys collaborate really closely with law enforcement, and you've actually taken on the bad guys. But I'd love to hear the story from your perspective. How do you respond to some of those criticisms?
Yeah, I mean, I was reading, I think it was Nasdaq report about, first of all, the usage of cryptocurrencies as stablecoin as part of cryptocurrencies for illicit activity. And it was actually kind of like a drop in the ocean compared to the usage of the US dollar and cash. Now, the reason for that is that cash, US dollar, or even the traditional banking system are very flawed. I'd imagine that you are a law enforcement agency and you have to trace an activity across wire across like 3 different jurisdictions. Good luck with that because you are not seeing any movement. There is no transparency in the process.
None. I've had that conversation with law enforcement agents frequently. When they see the money go to a foreign bank, they see that as almost certainly a dead end, but at a minimum, multi-month delay in information gathering because they have to file an MLAT, a multilateral assistance request, and get foreign government to influence the local bank to then share the information about where did that wire actually go. It's incredibly difficult compared to what we're all familiar with in the world of blockchain.
Yeah, and I think one of my statements, that's colorful statements, is that if you use USDT or general crypto to do any of this activity, you are a very stupid criminal because you will be traced and you will be caught, right? So, I mean, you guys and Tether and Bitfinex and Chainalysis have a long time collaboration. Also, you helped us with tracing the Bitcoin of the Bitfinex hacks in 2016. So that's another story, right? While the hackers were moving the fund, they were leaving traces and eventually they got caught. That shows compared to the cash or the traditional financial system, it's very, very hard, no matter how much money you have to get away with it, no matter who you are, because every single all action is on chain. And the beauty of blockchain is that you cannot delete it, you cannot tamper with it, you cannot change it. So it will remain there for the rest of the eternity. Now, with Tether, we have realized from the beginning, first of all, we are a centralized stablecoin. We never try to say otherwise, right? As a centralized stablecoin that needs to rely on banking, we need to make sure that we are doing the best we can and above that in order to have a proper safe ecosystem. And so what we did also, partnering with you guys through the ecosystem monitoring tool and all the different tools that we refined over the last few years. Now we are able to collaborate very quickly in real time with more than 140 law enforcement agencies across more than 40 different countries. So which other financial institution can do that, right?
I wouldn't imagine any do. It's an unusual scale of participation. I think the other thing that's important to note here too, you touched on this primary versus secondary market, where you obviously KYC all of the people that are able to issue or redeem Tether directly with the company. But that secondary market is very, very large. That's where a retail user like me might swap some Bitcoin for some Tether on an exchange. I think historically, most stablecoin issuers have said, well, the secondary market is somebody else's problem and wash their hands of it. And I think you've taken the approach to say, no, we need to make sure that the system holistically is safe and trustworthy. And so you're now proactively monitoring that secondary market, and the collaboration with law enforcement extends to stopping illicit activity in the secondary space as well.
Look, I mean, hiding under the sand is not helpful, right? So we count to have around more than 350 million users on the secondary market. These people are living in high inflation countries in Argentina, in Turkey, Vietnam, in so many countries. And these are families that they cannot rely on their national currency. They need to have access to the dollar. And since banking is not present there, or high percentages, more than 50% of unbanked in those countries, not because they are bad people, they are just too poor of being in interest of the banking system because they cannot generate enough fees to sustain a bank account. If we didn't monitor properly the secondary market, we would put them at danger, right? So our ecosystem would be full of threat. Instead, we want to make sure that these guys, that they need a lifeline at this moment, because after the pandemic, so many countries have even more issues with the high inflation and so on. That's why we are doing it, right? It's the right thing to do. Right? Tether is centralized. It's not Bitcoin. Has the means to help and monitor its ecosystem. And hence, we have to do it, and we have to do it the best way we can. And having the tools and be prepared with tools to do so is very crucial, of course. But we proved also with collaborating with you guys that we could proactively find people that were abusing the system and trying to scam others through pigback sharing, romance scams. But even think about the exchange hack. We froze many USDTs stolen from exchanges or from DeFi protocols. And that helped thousands and thousands of people to eventually get back their money. If you have that power to do good, I think you are in the position to do good. And again, we are just a US dollar on a transport layer that is decentralized. So it's just that blockchains are transport layer for Tether. That's like PayPal on blockchain.
Yeah.
So that's why we're very proud when we see recently the Department of Justice sending a positive note saying that they were thanking for our collaboration, because we see it as an advancement also not only of us as a company, but also to show to the world and to regulators as well that this is the way to go, but also that this technology as blockchain is actually improving the incredible intransparency of the financial system so far.
It's been an incredible moment of maturation, I think, for the company, and something I would encourage listeners who have maybe been skeptical of your company to re-examine some of the facts here, because I think the dollar amount seized, the active collaboration with law enforcement, the monitoring of the secondary market, it's a very different situation than say 4 or 5 years ago. I want to close our conversation because I know we're running out of time here, and I want to keep you on schedule today with maybe a rapid fire round. I've got a bunch of questions about different elements of strategy. One is on the topic of tokenization. So I think most people equivocate Tether, the company, and USDT, the US dollar-based digital asset. You've always had other assets that you've offered, but lately it seems like you're accelerating. You've announced a dirham-backed token that will be launched in the UAE. I would imagine, given the MiCA regulations, you're probably exploring euro-backed assets. You also launched something called Alloy. Give us the big picture strategy there. Do we eventually see everything tokenized by Tether, every possible asset, or is it narrower than that in scope?
Well, what we're doing is, first of all, when it comes to stable coins, we're focusing on the ones that we think are meaningful. So dollar is the dollar, right? Everyone wants the dollar. Outside the US, everyone is desperate to have the dollar.
Yeah.
The second other that is having quite some success is Tether Gold. So tokenized gold bars. It's now 700 million market cap.
Wow.
Still far from USDT. Still, it's USDT is $119 billion. So it's quite far, but still it's very accepted and applauded by the community. I must say that your stablecoin didn't do well. And I think the way I described is that stablecoins are much more powerful outside of the country that relates to the national currency that is type 2. So USDT is much more powerful outside the US rather than inside the US.
Sure.
But that works only because the US dollar is very accepted outside the US. But if you go outside Europe, no one's wanted the euro, right? So it's trickier for euro stablecoins. But I think that euro stablecoins will be powerful when it comes to financial institutional settlement to reduce barriers and move money faster. Now, why the dirham stablecoin is that Dubai and Abu Dhabi are becoming center of finance in the world, and there is a huge interest of holding the UAE dirham outside of UAE because it's first of all it's tagged to the dollar, and also there is huge corridor of remittances between India and UAE and other countries. We think there is a huge potential there, but we understand that we cannot tokenize everything ourselves. We are launching a platform. I will not unveil the name yet, but that platform is white labeling all the technology that Tether built in terms of tokenization, KYC, AML, KYT. That platform will bring you many customers, I believe, as well. That because we'll have the connection to you guys, the support for Chainalysis, and it's a platform where that you can use to create your own stablecoin, but also tokenize stocks, bonds, shares of funds, everything that you even like reward point and all the crazy things you have in your mind. We plan to launch it in October, so we'll see.
From recording now, we're only a few weeks away, so maybe by the time we publish the episode, people can go read about it. Different topic. Blockchains. It seems like the number of blockchains, particularly roll-ups or layer twos as they're often referred to, is exploding. Every exchange seems to be creating their own roll-up. We're getting app-specific roll-ups. We're also getting some unusual ones like the Ton network that kind of exists almost as an adjunct to the Telegram messaging service, which I think you recently announced support for. How do you think about where the ecosystem goes? Is the future thousands of app-specific chains? Are we just in a weird moment and we're going to see consolidation and a number of chains die off and go away? Where are we going?
Blockchains are becoming like the solution to all the illnesses of the world. So, and that's not the way to go. Blockchains are so inefficient. Like again, peer-to-peer is fine. That's what I believe is important to push. But peer-to-peer does not mean blockchain. Blockchains are slow. You should use blockchains only for the most important critical tasks, right? Like storing something that you want to have forever, or you want to decentralize, even in a small group, access to information. Now, a certain type of information, you cannot store terabytes and petabytes of data on the blockchain. I believe that so most of these layer 2 they don't have a use because they are growing just because of the incentives. They come up with a new token that they print out of thin air. They share it. They give this token to as an airdrop, and then they die off when there is a new chain that will create a new airdrop, and then rinse and repeat. The reason why I like On is that they have an ecosystem. So Telegram has 1 billion users, and so there is no other chain that has that ecosystem, right? So distribution is the most important thing in basically any business.
That's right.
Right. And to me, Telegram is the distribution for Ton. It's very rare. There are a few other cases, of course, of good distribution platforms, but that's very rare. So I think that most of these chains will die off.
Yeah, it seems likely to me as well. It's hard to pick the winners at the moment, but your point about distribution is exactly how I see the market. Distribution rules everything here. If you can command reach, you have such an advantage. All right, last one, CBDCs, these central bank digital currencies. Are those meaningful? Should we be paying attention to these CBDC projects, or is that going to be an anachronism of history in a few years?
Well, I think that there are some countries that are looking at CBDCs. I mean, I think that I'm happy to see US trying to push against users of CBDCs. The reason is there are two main reasons. The main one is privacy. So today, if you have a credit card or a debit card, you go and buy coffee somewhere. That transaction stays between you and the issuer of the credit card. Now, of course, if there is a court order, there is a spin up, the information will be shared, rightfully so. But imagine a future where you remove the intermediary. That is the issuer, the credit card, debit card, and the government will have direct information of every single transaction you make. Now, the government can geolocate you anywhere in the world. The government can understand exactly what are your interests, habits, preferences. That becomes very, very scary and dystopian. So, for example, Europe is going to do a CBDC. I think is very, very dangerous. But also, Europe has some crazy laws on privacy. That's true. So who knows? But even that, the other problem is what happens to banks. And coming from me is weird, right? But I think that banks are good intermediaries. They should do a better job in risk management and stop blowing up, even in Switzerland, like Credit Suisse blew up, right? So it's not a great example, but banks should act or be treated as intermediaries or like shields between the government and people's money. So in my opinion, even in the blockchain world, banks needs to renew themselves and reform themselves, but they still have a place. And CBDCs could heavily impact the banking world, removing the banks. First of all, many jobs will be lost, but at the same time, people's privacy in the eyes of the government will be lost. And that is a very slippery slope.
Yeah, great perspective. Paolo, this has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate you taking the hour with us to unpack the business. We've got a lot of follow-ups. We're going to keep an eye out for the tokenization platform when that launches in a few weeks. We're all going to go try Hole Punch and the peer-to-peer video chatting app. Anything else you want to mention before we let you go?
No, I just thank you for having me and hearing me ranting about everything.
Fantastic. For what seems like a weekly occurrence, on October 1st, the US Department of Treasury, the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade concurrently designated members of Evil Corp, a Russia-based cybercrime syndicate responsible for the development and distribution of the Drydex malware, which has infected computers and harvested login credentials, resulting in more than $100 million in theft from hundreds of banks and other financial institutions worldwide. This organization also has deep roots in Russia's cybercrime landscape. To read more about the global disruption of Evil Corp, their connection to the Lockbit ransomware syndicate, and the global coordination that led to the takedown of these Russia-based cybercriminals, head down to the link in the show notes for the complete analysis from my team. Thanks for listening to another episode. If you enjoyed what you heard today, do me a favor. Open up your podcast app, rate the show, give us a review, tell us what you liked. Even better, you can share the podcast with your friends. And of course, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.